Good evening, y'all. It's a special live show edition of a Tuesday night appearance here on the Dogs HQ YouTube channel. My name is Wes Blankenship, and it is Bloody Tuesday. Let me explain to you what Bloody Tuesday means. Bloody Tuesday is Georgia's toughest day of the week at practice. It's when they really set the tone for what the game should feel like. And when you hear Georgia players say practices are harder than the games here at Georgia, they're talking about Bloody Tuesday. So what I like to do on Bloody Tuesdays every now and then is make it really hard on the hot takes about Georgia football. All right, y'all are going to have some hot takes about the Dogs. Well, I'm going to examine them and tell you whether you're right or you're wrong. Now, this is a special edition. This used to be a written column, and this season I'm just going to sprinkle leading up to some big games throughout the season some Bloody Tuesdays on our YouTube channel. So hit like and subscribe if you don't already do that. And we'll talk about Georgia and Kentucky Bloody Tuesday topics. And the first one that I want to start out with is kind of like a combined hot take that a lot of people are just kind of leaning on. And that is that Georgia is sleepwalking. So I think when you see Georgia start out really slow, I think they have like 17 points or something in the first quarter through how 5 games they've played this year. And you compare that with the, I guess, 63 points. I'll need to go back and double check that math that they have in the third quarter. You think, oh, wow, they're just starting off really slow. They're sleepwalking. They're just taking some time to get into the game. Now, what I've referred to this as, last season, I called it playing with their food. And I think Georgia at times last season did play with its food. It was an experienced team, and it really did know that it could go out and blow the doors off of anybody because they did it in the first game against Oregon. And Oregon was a pretty good football team even then, maybe not the caliber of Duck that they are this season. But I'd say more than likely, if I was going to call a team a sleepwalker team, there were games last season where Georgia did sleepwalk. Kent State, Samford, Missouri, and it almost cost them. They almost lost. This season, I do not think Georgia is sleepwalking. I think you have a bunch of guys who really do want to win, and they really do want to compete and play, obviously, for a third straight national championship. But I think what's holding Georgia back this year is not so much being sleepwalkers. I think this team is not experienced enough to dictate anything yet. They're talented enough. Georgia's still recruiting really well, but they're not sleepwalking. They're just trying to wake up. They're trying to wake up because they're waking up to the reality of what it means to be a first-year starting quarterback, Carson Beck. They're trying to wake up and figure out, how do I play on the defensive line when Jalen Carter's not there to set the pace? Nazir Stackhouse. Now, these guys are playing well, but they're not the caliber of player, experienced player, that you had last season. You can't replace that overnight. So is Georgia sleepwalking? Well, Bloody Tuesday, my take on that is no. I'm going to say, heck no. I'm going to push back pretty hard on that. This team and this culture here at Georgia, they want it. Trust me. But they're not going into games thinking, we can just beat everybody because we won the last 2 national championships. Maybe there are a couple players who subconsciously operate that way. But that is not a conscious thought. Hey, we're going to sleepwalk. We can show up. We can just show up whenever we want to, and we can win in the second half. If they did think that, South Carolina should have taught them the lesson, right? Well, they went to Auburn and had some trouble in the first half. They didn't execute great. That's not sleepwalking. That's just a problem with some execution. So, yes, can you be concerned about this Georgia team and think, oh, man, they're not doing what the last 2 teams did? Yeah, but not because they're sleepwalking. It's because of different reasons. We got a comment here from Clayton McGee. Georgia is not man enough to beat Kentucky. Uh-oh. The ghost of Pat Dye is back. Kentucky's going to line up and run the ball at will, and they're going to play defense, and I just don't think Georgia's man enough to stop it. Is this Kirby Smart? Coach, is this you? Clayton McGee? Your parents live in Clayton, Georgia. Is this your pseudonym? Is this your burner? Coach Kirby Smart. Let me tell you, I will I'll go to my next Bloody Tuesday topic. Thanks to Coach Smart. I mean Clayton McGee. There's a take floating around out there. I think from I don't remember which outlet it's from, so I don't want to say the wrong one. That Georgia will start slow again against Kentucky because they've always started slow against Kentucky under Kirby Smart. I don't necessarily disagree with the notion that Georgia may start slow against Kentucky, but it has nothing to do with the fact that they started slow against Kentucky every other year. That stuff, it really doesn't matter. It's neat to put in a storyline, neat to put in a byline and make it a topic, but it doesn't matter. Is it a coincidence? Yeah. Is it, because Kentucky plays physical football? That might have something to do with it. But it doesn't mean that Georgia's starting slow because of that. If Georgia starts slow, it's because they don't have a different way to go about games right now. They're building a habit. That might be your concern. Georgia's slow starts become a habit. But they're not going to start slow just because it's Kentucky. They're going to start slow because that's what Georgia's identity is right now. But I also will say, just because Georgia started slow in every other game doesn't mean Georgia will start slow against Kentucky. I think you've got a pretty phenomenal chance here for Carson Beck coming off of that road win to go into Sanford Stadium at night, riding the lightning of the lights between the hedges, and maybe Georgia's offense actually starts quick. That's certainly a possibility. Yes, Kentucky's running the ball well, but who are they running the ball well against? Florida was certainly not worthy of their top 25 ranking. I think we knew that. Not that good of a football team. I'm not saying Kentucky's not good. Don't miss me on that. Don't get that twisted there. But I think Georgia has a pretty good chance with its run defense to give Kentucky its best test that it's had. Say what you will about what Georgia did or didn't do against Auburn, but that Auburn scheme was a little bit different. And yes, I do believe that Kentucky will watch that tape and they'll find some ways to make that part of their offense. They'll try to bring some wrinkles in to do that same thing against Georgia. A little bit of that read option look, but that's not how Kentucky runs the football. They run right at you. So will Georgia have a tough test, have a lot of cats on its hands on Saturday night? Absolutely it will. But don't rule out Georgia starting quickly just because they've always started slow against Kentucky and they've always started slow this season. They missed an opportunity. They missed a shot. Mike Bobo had a perfectly schemed up play when Beck and Delp failed to connect. I'll let you decide whose fault it was. Maybe it was both of their faults. Maybe it was just Beck. Maybe Delp just didn't adjust quick enough. I don't know. I'm not in the rooms to make that call. I'm not an offensive guru. What I do know is you were about 2-3 feet away from a touchdown right there on that drive, striking for 6, and you didn't have it. And it really turned the game upside down because right after that, you have a pick, Auburn scores, you have a 14-point swing, and then you got a ball game, and you're on the road, and all those orange-clad fans are in your throat. So I think that Georgia really could start quick at Kentucky. Kentucky's pass defense is not that strong. I think they're ranked around 70th in the country. So the Dogs, with a pretty lethal passing attack, with Brock Bowers, by the way, and all that depth at receiver, which they have not had in years past. Yeah, you want more out of the backfield. You're used to Georgia being RBU. Well, who's to say Georgia doesn't start to pass to set up the run? And who's to say that Kendall Milton doesn't come back this week and have a strong game against the Wildcats just like he had last season up in Lexington? Could Georgia start slow? Here's my Bloody Tuesday take. Yeah, they could. Does it have anything to do with the fact that they started slow against Kentucky in every other year against Kirby Smart, as with Kirby Smart as the head coach? It has 0% to do with that. If that is what happens, and if they do start slow, maybe it's just because it's the identity of this team, or maybe it's just because Kentucky is the best test that Georgia's had so far. Auburn was good. They had a good defense. I think Kentucky's a much better all-around team. I don't care, who you played. If you've made it to 5-0 at this point in the season, you're a good football team. Are you great? Maybe. Is Georgia great? We'll find out. I think we'll find out a little bit about that on Saturday. I do like what Georgia did with the comeback against Auburn. They showed a lot of heart, but even Kirby Smart acknowledged the fact that the Dogs left a lot out there on the field and have a lot more that they can do. They left a lot to be desired. Let's see what else we got here in the comments. There's a reason to be concerned, says Cy Morgan. Auburn was a one-trick pony, and we couldn't stop them. If they would have left Robbie in instead of Ford, they would have won easily. Go Dogs with a Z. Maybe. I think the one-trick pony aspect of that game was that Georgia got schemed up, and Hugh Freeze kind of took it to Georgia's defense there for a lot of the game. But also think about the short fields that Auburn was on. Georgia cannot turn the ball over against Kentucky. They'll put it in. I mean, Georgia's struggling in the red zone defensively. They had some good stops. They were helped by a pretty questionable call when Auburn could have just taken the points and kicked a field goal. But Georgia's given up some points in the red zone, certainly on short field, so you can't turn it over. J-Way Trucking LLC. Hope your trucking company's doing well. Glad you're joining us. Hope you're not out on the road. Stay safe, J-Way. J-Way says, I do believe Georgia will open up this game. You'll see why the voters believe why they're number one in the rankings. We'll get into some ranking talk here, too. Christopher Reese says 26-23, Kentucky's going to get the win. Not only do the voters think that Georgia's number one, the Vegas indication is that Georgia opened up as a 17-point favorite, now just 14.5. We're going to get into this a little bit more on the Georgia show tomorrow night. But Jake Rowe believes that's a sucker bet. And I don't think Jake Rowe's wrong here. Sucker bet if you don't gamble. I don't, but I'll break it down. Vegas knows something. And so they give you a bet. They give you a line that you think looks like easy money. 17 points after Georgia just struggled at Auburn and Kentucky just ran it down Florida's throats. Are you kidding me? Give me that all day long. Give me the Cats. Well, you bought it down to 14.5. Those chandeliers aren't free in Vegas. I've heard about them. I've never been myself, but I've heard they're pretty nice. So who's to say that Vegas doesn't know a little something about how this game might go if Georgia executes? I think, Vegas knew something about how that Auburn game should have gone. Once again, ifs and buts, I know. But if Beck hits Delp there, that's a 14-point swing. Georgia wins that game by how many points? At least 14. They cover. So it's a marginal game. But I do think that there's a possibility here that Vegas believes that Georgia could throw the ball all over the yard at Kentucky, against Kentucky. The Wildcats struggle with penalties. They average about 7 per game. And you bring that into a night crowd atmosphere at Sanford Stadium. You got some procedure penalties and some false starts in your future if you're Kentucky, at least 1 or 2. I'd have to guess. Then maybe Vegas believes that Kentucky's walking into a little bit of a house of horrors here, and Georgia does win comfortably. Maybe not comfortable for a lot of y'all. You're used to seeing Georgia win by 20, 28 points. That's not always going to happen, certainly not against Kentucky, but we'll see. As far as the rankings go, guys, we had Kirby Smart speaking to the media today. And Kirby Smart, here's our next Bloody Tuesday hot take from the head coach himself. Kirby Smart believes that every SEC team should be ranked. He was talking about the upstart teams in the SEC that have played really well. Specifically asked about Missouri and Kentucky, I believe. And everyone is latching onto this. This just happened about an hour and a half ago, I think. If you go back and actually watch the press conference, you can watch it on our YouTube channel. Kirby's asked about those upstart teams, and he says that he thinks every SEC team should be ranked because he believes there are some unranked SEC teams that some ranked teams would be scared to play. Well, I don't think anyone would be scared to play Vanderbilt, and I don't think many teams would be scared to play Arkansas. But Kirby's point was, A, he doesn't care about the rankings. He doesn't care if Georgia's ranked 1 or 120. He believes that every team in the SEC could beat you at any given time. And he's not wrong about that. Really, this Georgia team, I think Georgia could lose to any SEC team if it doesn't bring its A game. Last year's Georgia team, they were so dominant, they could probably, like we said, sleepwalk and still find a way to win. And they did that against Mizzou. Almost lost. They were a Dominic Lovett failed play action sell away from Malachi Starks not realizing it was a run play and chasing that run down to the 1 yard line. And then Georgia's defense held and forced a field goal. Difference in the game. But that was as close as it really got. I think this Georgia team, they don't execute. They turn the ball over. They start too slow in a tough place. Or against a team that can run it and they get up a big lead and Georgia can't match it. I think Georgia could lose. So when I hear Kirby Smart say what he said, no, Kirby's wrong. Not every SEC team should be ranked. But here is the layer to this onion. The Schumann Farms onion that just signed Ladd McConkey to a perfect NIL deal, by the way. Kirby is giving every single SEC team on his schedule a little bit of rat poison. Hey, Vandy, see you that you're 0-5. You should still be ranked, though, because you're in the SEC. So when you play Georgia, you need to believe that you have enough of what it takes to beat Georgia, so you try a little less hard. Hey, when we play you in a few weeks, Mizzou, yeah, you're only in the top 20. You're ranked 21st in the country. You should be ranked higher because you're in the SEC. So when you come to Athens, just want y'all to know, y'all are good. Y'all don't have to worry about it. You can show up, take the week off of practice a little bit. You're good enough to beat us. That's what Kirby's doing. So Bloody Tuesday hot take, was Kirby correct to say that every SEC team should be ranked? Hell no. That's not true. And Kirby knows that. Was Kirby right as a head coach to say that every SEC team should be ranked? Oh, yeah. Because he's the rat poison king right now. He gives his own team rat poison, and they somehow get stronger because of it. That yummy rat poison that Nick Saban says. It's the stuff that motivates the team. So yeah, Kirby knows what he's doing. It was just kind of a ho-hum post-Bloody Tuesday press conference availability. Kirby comes into those a little bit saltier. He's got the raggedy practice vest or whatever he's wearing. It looks like a windbreaker. The G is just clinging on for dear life. And Kirby still had the presence of mind to come in and say, yeah, Vandy, Arkansas, y'all should be ranked. Hang in there. Hang in there, Pitt. I like what Kirby said. What else we got here? Rhett Womack points out that Kentucky was losing in the third to Eastern Kentucky. You mean to say in order for Kentucky's luck to continue, they need several lucky breaks against the Dogs? Want to welcome in Tomahawk Dog, Rhett Womack, Uncle Glenn, some regulars over on the Georgia Show, which we show every Sunday and Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. If y'all like what I have going on, normally I have a couple more knuckleheads with me talking ball, and they're way more of an expert than I am. I'm just kind of flapping my gums up here tonight, taking on these hot takes because it's Bloody Tuesday. But we have some team experts that cover the team. They live and breathe the team. They sleep it. We have recruiting experts that have the latest intel on Dogs prospects and recruits. So that's the Georgia Show. It's every Wednesday and Sunday at 8:30 p.m. And these guys in the comments always keep it live. But if you don't make those shows all the time, I welcome you in tonight as we just talk about some dogs here for a few minutes. Rhett, I know, man. I know it's easy to look at Kentucky and see some games where they weren't super competitive. But here's what I'll tell you about the Wildcats this year. They put together a pretty strong lineup of transfer portal players. And I think when you see a team like Kentucky struggle a little bit out of the gate themselves, I think what we were seeing there was a team that was trying to figure out how to play together. And I don't know if Georgia's catching them too early or if Georgia's catching them after they truly found out how to play ball together. If it's the former, then Georgia shouldn't have much of an issue. If it's the latter, then you've got some pretty talented dudes. You've got some really stout, tall, lengthy DBs, and you got a tough running game, man. I mean, Kentucky can run the football. They're one of the best in the country. I'll pull up the stats here at running the football. And what did Georgia struggle with against Auburn running the ball? Now, as I addressed, that's a different kind of animal. The way that Kentucky runs as compared to the way that Auburn ran it with a lot of motion and eye candy. Kentucky just wants to be physical. Kentucky's got a super senior, Ray Davis, at running back. He's rushed it 76 times for 8 touchdowns. That is tied for second in the country. And he has 594 rushing yards, which is 4th best in the country. So he can run the football. And that, if he can run well, that means they can block well. And Georgia's got to find out how physical they are. They're going to find out. And I think today at practice, they probably found out how physical they need to be. If today was good enough for Georgia, if they were practicing hard enough to make this game easy, then I can tell you it was a tough practice. But they're going to have a tough test against Ray, for sure. Uncle Glenn Hartley says Dogs 31-16. I could see it. Getting that just barely covering, Uncle Glenn. So the Dogs are going up against a Kentucky team that is figuring out how to play. By the end of the year, I won't be surprised if this Kentucky team has 1 or 2 losses. And I think one of them should be to Georgia. But the Dogs can't just mess around with Kentucky. You can't turn the ball over twice. You can't start slow against Kentucky and have all those things happen and still expect to cover, let alone win. So Georgia's got to figure it out. I think they can. I think they have a lot to work on, a lot to watch from that Auburn game. And I think you're watching a Kentucky team that with Mark Stoops here in his, I guess it's 9th, 10th season, whatever it is, he's been around for a reason. All right. And it's not just because Kentucky is okay with being a basketball school. He's done well. He's recruited well, and now he's using the portal really well to his advantage. We had some things over at the DawgsHQ message board. If you want to check that out, it is, thank you, Rhett, 11th season. DawgsHQ message board, that is for our premium subscribers, and it's a great community of dogs. It is $1 for 1 month to take us for a little trial run, and I encourage that because it's just like this YouTube chat we got going on right here, except it's all day with more than just me, with a lot of those experts that I mentioned. And it's a lot of feedback and a lot of great stuff. It's a lot of spicy stuff on a game day. And it gets a little heated in there, no doubt about it. But we had a question over on our message board over at DawgsHQ.com, and I'll run through some of the premium questions I had or Bloody Tuesday takes that people brought up to me. Let's see what I got here. Well, the first one was from my On3 colleague, Andy Staples. And Andy Staples had a tweet saying this is what the college football playoff could look like if, get that here, if you had a 12-team playoff. And a lot of Georgia fans on our board were a little perturbed by the fact that Andy had this kind of ranking. He had Georgia at 7. We'll just start with the Dogs element there. Georgia at 7. He had his top 4. Number 1, Penn State. Number 2, Texas. Number 3, Florida State. And number 4, Bama. And a lot of people were kind of annoyed that Andy Staples would have Bama at number 4. I'll tell you this, guys. Here's my Bloody Tuesday take on Bama and on Georgia. If you think Alabama's dead, they're not dead yet. Yes, they got to go through A&M, and that's going to be a tough game, College Station. But if y'all are annoyed with what Andy Staples has together here in his projected 12-team playoff field, as of today, the way that teams are playing, do you really think that Bama couldn't beat Georgia if the Tide and the Dogs met in the SEC championship? Don't worry about what's going on right now. Don't worry about the A&M game. Let's say Bama makes it to the SEC championship in Atlanta, and this is Andy Staples' rankings based on the way teams are playing right now. Do you really think that Alabama's rushing attack couldn't beat Georgia? You really think Georgia going up against Bama's defense, you really think the Tide couldn't make that night hard for Georgia? I know y'all want to throw the dirt on Nick Saban's grave right now. I know y'all want to say that Bama's done. They've only lost one game, y'all, and it was not in the conference. Yes, they lose this weekend. Their road is pretty much done. But I got news for y'all, man. Y'all surprised? Y'all are annoyed that Bama's at number 4? I don't know. I don't know that Georgia would have as easy of a time taking down the Tide today as a lot of y'all want to think. In Atlanta in December, I think it could be a different story because I believe Georgia is on the rise. I don't know how much better Bama can get. I think they're good enough right now to beat a lot of teams, including A&M. But I think Georgia is only a fraction of where they will be, where they can be by the end of the season because they're still figuring some things out too. But Bama's not dead yet. So I'll answer on Andy's behalf on this Bloody Tuesday take. Bama's not done. Not saying that I agree that Georgia's 7th best, but I'm not surprised, and I don't disagree with the notion that Bama could absolutely win the rest of its games and beat Georgia in Atlanta. It's not a fun thing to talk about on this YouTube channel, but I think it could happen. John Adams says, I don't hear much about Bloody Tuesday. Is that because injuries require safe Tuesdays? So Bloody Tuesday, John, is not me talking specifically about how Bloody Tuesday went for Georgia. It's just me taking hot takes and giving them the Bloody Tuesday treatment. I'm out to injure the hot takes. So far, we've had some that came out unscathed, like that last one. I kind of agreed with. And I kind of agreed with Kirby Smart, saying that every SEC team should be ranked. But I also examine the ones that are just crazy or the ones that I really don't agree with, and I run them through the ringer because they deserve to be checked, and they deserve to know whether or not they're right or wrong. Let's get to a couple more from the DawgsHQ message board that y'all sent to me. Once again, $1 for 1 month of a trial run over at DawgsHQ. This is the Bloody Tuesday special. We won't do this every week. Just want to get through some takes on a big game week, and I think this qualifies as a big game week. Georgia, Kentucky, both undefeated. How about the SEC East? The SEC Beast, baby. It's a tough division, maybe one of the toughest in college football as of right now. Let's see. All right, we got one Philadog GA. Philadog, I don't know what that means. Philadelphia Dog. Kirby's gone soft after winning 2 national championships, doesn't coach the team tough anymore. That is a hot take that Philadelphia Dog heard. I don't think Kirby's gotten soft. I do think that when I look at the composure emphasis for the team, I had some doubts myself during the Auburn game. Is Kirby leaning too much into this composure element of his coaching? Is he auto-correcting or overcorrecting from his instincts of a tough coach, a hard-nosed coach that when he came in, he was chewing everybody out, right? Needed the get-back coach, needed Coach Sinclair to hold him back. When I saw Georgia playing a little slow, not knowing where to go, not matching Auburn's physicality, I wondered, is Georgia too composed? And when I say too composed, I mean, have they lost that dog? Have they lost that fight? Are they mean enough? Have they lost that edge? And I'm still not sure if they haven't. I want to see this week. I want to see how they come out of that Auburn game. I want to see if they've learned a little bit more and have a little bit more instinct. And that's really the heart of that issue. Those Dogs teams that won in 2021 and 2022, they could be mean because they knew what they were doing without thinking about it. They could impose their will. They could dictate a ball game because they didn't have to think twice. So the emphasis on composure was a good safety check to keep those guys in check. Don't get too high. Don't get too low. Don't play yourself out of a game. Right now, I don't think they're too composed. I think that was an emotional thought I had in the middle of a game. But I want to see if Georgia can get the experience by the end of this season, have enough experience to let these dogs run and be mean and dictate the game and set the tone of a game. Because I still haven't seen Georgia do that. Now, the composure element is great when you're on the road. You play Auburn. Rusty brought this up. They were composed enough to not have a single procedural penalty, no pre-snap stuff that a lot of teams have on the road, specifically in the SEC. So that part of their composure is great. They're down 14-0 against South Carolina, 14-3. That composure was great. You saw that halftime clip that's gone viral. You trail Auburn on the road, playing terribly, turning the ball over, getting run all over. The most yards that teams rushed for against Georgia since LSU in Death Valley in 2018. That side of their composure is great. But I want to see if Georgia can dial up that tenacity, dial up that dog. You got to dial up the dog. I might trademark that. Dial up the dog. Don't be too composed. Don't be so composed that you can't dial up the dog right when you kick off. So no, Kirby's not gotten smart. But if Kirby's not gotten soft, he's been smart. That's his last name, and he is a smart guy. I want to see if Georgia is not man enough, but I want to see if Georgia's playing fast enough and playing physical enough to not let this composure part of the emphasis be something that makes them a little too reactive, a little too passive. It's a fine balance. I'm not saying that I've got it dialed down. I'm not saying that I've got it dialed in and locked down, because Lord knows I don't. It's just me observing. I want to see that Georgia is able to stay composed like Georgia stayed composed against Missouri, like Georgia stayed composed against Ohio State. But you know what they also did against Missouri and Ohio State? They started to find ways to dictate that ball game. It wasn't right when it kicked off, but it was by the end of the game. Missouri didn't want to be on the field with Georgia anymore. Ohio State didn't want to be on the field with Georgia anymore. They were beating them up. I want to see if Georgia can bring that back. Get a couple more here. Rhett Womack says, I'll never second-guess Kirby, but I'm not a Chaz Chambliss fan, hard worker, ready to see some of these big-time recruits come off the edge. I know Chaz is getting beaten up. Georgia was not just beaten up on the edge. And specifically when you talk about that Auburn game, there were some middle linebacker, some linebacker assignments, as Jake Rowe explained it to me, that could have been picked up on some of those rushes, some of those big run gains off the edge. So I know Chaz is a punching bag for a lot of y'all, but don't give up on him. That's all I can say. He's on the field for a reason, and he's holding his own in the SEC. He's made some plays this year, and he's going to make some more yet. Any team with a dual threat quarterback would give Georgia's defense a run for their money. Elite quarterback play has been the Achilles heel, the kryptonite of Georgia's defense every season, not just this year. Last year, CJ Stroud, by the way, every person who said that CJ Stroud's Peach Bowl performance was a fluke, where are you? You've seen what he's doing in the league? I said after that game that he should have won the Heisman. He was a baller in that game, and he's showing everybody what he's capable of right now in the league. Bryce Young made that night a living hell for Georgia in Atlanta in the SEC championship game. Elite quarterback play is going to hurt Georgia's defense no matter what, because you're going to have a hard time accounting for them. But yes, this season, what if Auburn could actually throw the football? Holy smokes. Georgia doesn't face that against Kentucky. Georgia doesn't face that against Vandy the following week. Georgia doesn't face that against Mizzou, but Georgia will face its best passing attack against Mizzou, probably. With Burton. Whew. That's a dog. So, yes, the dual threat stuff is going to give Georgia trouble. But which team in college football has the elite dual threat quarterback, but also has an elite defense? I don't know of one. And Georgia's offense is only getting better each week, as is Carson Beck, which takes me to my next Bloody Tuesday hot take that I want to take down. And I mean take it down like a horse collar tackle. Take it down. People are saying that Carson Beck is starting slow, and he is not the guy for the Dogs. And that's including Georgia fans. I kind of have a rule here that I'm not going to beat up on things that people say during the game on our live game chat, because the emotions are running high during a live game. And we have a live game thread every single game over at DawgsHQ.com if you want to check out that fun. It's worth the price of admission. But scroll back through that, and a lot of people saying Carson Beck is not the guy. And this was even after the game in some cases. I don't know how many people truly believe that who have actually watched him play a full game. But let me ask you this. What would Carson Beck getting benched do for Georgia's offense? What is Brock Vandagriff doing that Carson Beck is not doing? And that's not a slight against Brock Vandagriff, because he is super talented himself. But Mike Bobo's putting these plays together and putting Georgia in situations, and ultimately you're able to lean on Brock Bowers when you need him the most, and that's what Georgia did against Auburn. And by the way, Carson Beck did a fine job on third down on the road in the SEC in his first start. I think Georgia's in great hands if Carson Beck does go down or does get benched, which I don't see at this point. He's held on to his job this far in the season. But if you still don't think Carson Beck's the guy, then you probably also didn't think Stetson Bennett was the guy. And you're probably being overly critical of Mike Bobo. Has he been perfect? No. But let's pull up what Georgia's offense is doing so far in college football. I believe on third down conversion percentage, Georgia's number 7. They are second only to LSU in the SEC. 35 of 64, better than 50%. All right, there's one metric. Let's go with the team offense. Team passing efficiency. Where's Georgia on that one? All right, 31st in the country. Could be better. Carson Beck's growing up, and he's figuring out how to do that and how to be as efficient as he needs to be. But there's also some backup quarterback play that's coming in there too that needs to be a factor. Let's see what else we got. Total offense. Georgia is the 12th best team in the country in total offense, 20 total touchdowns, which is only 7 behind Oregon and USC, who are tied for first. Yards per play, they are 6.94 yards per play, which is not even 3 yards per play behind Washington, who is at 9.23. I mean, I could go on and on. Yards per game, Georgia's at 496 yards per game. Washington, obviously the best offense in the country, up there anyway, 593 yards per game. Who are they playing against, though? Georgia's played some decent defenses. So the overcritical nature of fans against Georgia's offense right now and Mike Bobo, I get it. You were going to come into this season with the predetermined notion that Mike Bobo is going to be terrible. He's not, though. Georgia's offense is getting better and better and better every single game. Do you need to see a little bit more consistency out of the O-line? Yeah, but they're doing some good things too. You need to see some more out of the backfield? Yes. Does Kendall Milton come back this week? That's a big question mark for me. I have a gut feeling that he will. And I have a gut feeling that he could have a really big game. You have Kendall Milton. You have Dylan Bell. You have Dejon Mustard back there in the backfield running for Georgia's offense. I'm not giving up on Georgia's backfield yet either. So that's Bloody Tuesday for this week, y'all. We'll pick another game to come back and do one of these for maybe Mizzou, maybe Florida, certainly Tennessee. If I had to circle them now, I'd say probably Tennessee, Ole Miss are 2 games I'll definitely do this for. But I appreciate y'all's feedback. First time I've done this in a video format. Appreciate you staying patient as I self-produce this and try to pull up some links and try to pull up some videos and metrics and graphics myself. It's not easy to do that and talk. It uses both sides of my brain, which is asking a lot of my brain, if you know me. But I appreciate y'all. Head on over to DawgsHQ.com. Take us for a trial run, $1 for 1 month. Join our message board, get some premium info, not just opinions like I had on the show tonight, some real breaking news, some real recruiting info, inside info that y'all can check out over there. And we'll be back here on the DawgsHQ YouTube channel tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern for the Georgia show, and back again in the post game that we do every Saturday after Kentucky is over, if y'all are up that late, and then back again every Sunday at 8:30 p.m. and Bark After Dark, which is a little bit more of a show that kind of has fun. Not that we don't have fun on the Georgia show, but we have great guests on that show that talk about their career journey, covering the Dogs, covering college football, a little bit more bourbon and tequila talk. If y'all are down for that, Jake Rowe and Jake Cruz do a great job of hosting that lifestyle / Georgia football show. That's every Monday at 9 p.m. And if you miss those, you can catch the Georgia show and Bark After Dark on Spotify and Apple Podcast. A lot of places to find what we're putting together here at DawgsHQ as Georgia goes for that three-peat. I know it looks a little dicey right now, but no one else is elite right now in college football either. And I think by the end of the year, you could just see Georgia pulling ahead and getting into shape, rounding into form, rounding into that standard that we've seen the past 2 seasons. Y'all have a great night. We'll catch you again soon right here on the DawgsHQ YouTube channel.